You can all hear me, I assume. It sounds like the mic's working okay. So I'm Steve Green. I'm the head of Central Data Services at the FCA. I'm in charge of most of our kind of centralised activity around the data space. I also happen to be the account executive for our data strategy portfolio, which is pretty much all data initiatives in the FCA. And that's the full life cycle of data. It's not just collection, it's not just kind of analysis, but it's kind of bringing everything together. So we've been on a journey, particularly over the last 18 months as an organisation, about how we move forward and innovate as an organisation. We were quite fortunate about 4 years ago, the organisation made a decision to move to the cloud. So a lot of our kind of platform work, a lot of our basis kind of technology that we need to allow us to be flexible in the digital and the data space has already started landing. And by spring next year, the intention is that we will be, pretty much every service will be in the cloud. Obviously, pretty much everyone must know what we do. As an organisation, we write policy, we authorise firms and personnel, we supervise what's going on the ground, and obviously we enforce. And really what we're looking at is the kind of digitalisation of us as a regulator, the innovation that we're driving as a regulator is across all of those areas. It isn't just one use case or two use cases. We are going after really the transformation of financial regulation. We released our data strategy, and I'll kind of touch upon it on the 7th of January this year, which very clearly states in our external communication, this is about transformation. This is not just about doing the same things in a slightly more electronic or a slightly more data-heavy way. As an organisation, we have grown when it comes to what we look after. So in a world where we have maybe not too many companies, maybe not too many people, we now look after just over 61,500 firms, I think is where we're at the moment. And so our ability to look after those firms, particularly in flexible portfolios where we don't have supervisory officers that know the firm in detail, we need to do something different to be able to look after those firms properly, to look after the consumers that use those firms. And so we find ourselves in a world where only through the kind of use of, using the kind of big data phrase, but only through really advanced techniques around data use, data monitoring, data analysis, but also changing the way we do aspects of our job. This is not just about giving someone some new data and saying, please carry on as you are. Only through really transforming the way we look at our jobs and the way we work are we going to be able to spot that. In a world where that yellow is actually black, and you're trying to find it, it's quite challenging. And so we're in a world where we really do understand that we as an organisation need to work differently to be able to spot that, and spot the trends, understand the market better, and obviously spot the bad actors. We started off about 2.5 years ago on this journey. I joined it about 18 months ago. For the first year, it was really a few people doing some pilot work, showing what might be possible to the organisation. And so we find ourselves with kind of hired a few data scientists. Meanwhile, the IT department is starting to work on its digital journey, but really it was about showcasing a few good ideas to the execs and getting them enthused about what might be possible on some very specific use cases. We then asked the organisation about a year ago, just over more than that, actually about 15 months ago, what do you want us to be able to achieve? So we kind of start off with that imagine if, unconstrain yourself, don't think about just improving your kind of data a little bit. What would you do differently if we were unconstrained from data, tech, process, people, whatever? And the idea was that we would constrain people later, but we didn't want people to think just about what they do today and how they do it today. And so, we as an organisation are clear that we have an intention to help reduce costs to firms. Those costs are passed on to consumers. Our job is to help consumers and to help markets work. So we're in a situation where, and you may not feel like it sometimes, reducing the compliance cost to firms is something we are targeting. We do care about our talent in the organisation. If we want to be on this journey for the long term, we have to be able to retain and attract the best talent. Where you've got 60,000 firms and we have, 4,000 staff, give or take, and our budget is not increasing, we have to be able to do things like automatic interventions where the decision is binary. But we've been very clear to our organisation, this is not becoming a data-driven organisation, this is about enabling the organisation to make judgments quicker, to help our staff remove the manual, remove the frustrating, remove the stuff that just wastes your time as much as possible. But then occasionally we will obviously do cleverer stuff. And so there's a bunch of stuff there that we go after. And so we asked the organisation to think more broadly around what could you possibly achieve. And so where we found ourselves about a year ago is huge number of good ideas. So interesting, when we actually asked people, we asked about 250, 300 people around the organisation, they had loads of good ideas. And they'd been kind of self-filtering them. They hadn't mentioned them to the IT department, they hadn't mentioned them to the current data teams. They were kind of expecting that we can't make this progress that you want us to. And so we're now in, thankfully, the middle. We kind of use Windows 95 here as an analogy where the hard lifting, the changes of the way people use desktop computing only really started in Windows 95. We are probably just at that point of inflection as an organisation, where we've now proven that we've got good ideas, we can make a difference, and we have some real cases in the FCA that have made a huge difference to the way we do some of our jobs. But we're now in the middle, which is really where the hard work starts. So this kind of message is on our website, it's not a surprise. Very clearly, this is about transforming the way we regulate. And that's the way we regulate internally, the way we operate as an organisation, the way we run. But the intent is also for that to be felt externally. So obviously you guys know about our Reg Sandbox work, the Innovate function that we have, the advice unit. Some of you will know about our digital regulatory reporting, where we are trying to look at how we can reduce the cost of compliance and the cost of reporting to the FCA. But fundamentally, we want to understand the markets better. We want to know the business models. We want to be able to spot things. We want to know what will work. We want to know where competition needs to be enhanced. We want to know that better than we do today. Clearly, we have to be able to identify and respond to problems quickly. We cannot have issues that are kind of festering time after time after time, and it takes us a while to kind of go after them. And the use of data and new kind of techniques, certainly we believe, will help us do better in that space. But also, we don't know all the answers. We don't even know all the questions of where we will be tomorrow. So the idea is that we have actually looked at an operating model for the organisation that is about acting differently when it comes to data, when it comes to the analysis and the science behind data, so that we can react to those questions as they come up. Because in a world that changes quite dramatically, particularly in financial services, as we've seen in the last 6 working days, it will take, we have to be able to respond and look at different things at speed. And we kind of group these into, being better at the inside, knowing more stuff, also operating more efficiently in this world of 61,000 firms. We have to be better at what we do with each unit of person that we have. We have to be kind of experts in those areas. We have to empower the teams around the use of analytics. And then the kind of one that external people probably don't realise is we have to be flexible in our sourcing. We do not just get our data from reg returns. So one of my teams is an information centre, effectively the library for the organisation. We buy data. We acquire it through third parties. We look at Step Change Charity. We look at Citizen Advice Bureau. We try to get data from every possible source we can before we ask firms for it. Again, on the understanding that it costs firms to do it, that cost is then relayed down to consumers somewhere in the chain. And we don't want that to happen. That's not what we're here for. So we do look at much more flexible sourcing. The journey obviously could have been one where we just imposed it centrally. We had the approval of FCA, our kind of executive committee, but what we actually ended up doing is saying we want to have a kind of half model between federation and centralisation. So we are developing data science units in most of our frontline divisions. So small groups of data scientists who are managed by the business but have a link back to our central functions, so that we can make sure that we've got people close to the business need, close to the business problem. They can react quickly, they can fix things quickly. But actually, they're working centrally when it comes to gaps, overlaps, sharing lessons, and feeling part of the community. There is a risk that if you are one of 3 or 4 data scientists in the frontline division, maybe you're just actually the best analyst in the house. And so this community is there to try and stop that being the case. So they are really pushing the boundaries. We have a new strategy. I'll talk about the summary and I'll talk about how our approach is. But we've managed to get a strategy through the executive committee. And that strategy internally has lots and lots of use cases that we're trying to get after, and we haven't published all of those externally. And the idea, obviously, is that we've got large kind of training programs as well. This is not just about bringing in new staff, it's about training our current staff to be better. So whether you are a consumer of that data, whether you are someone who's asked for it, whether you are a data analyst today, we've got a fairly holistic training program now to help them move forward in their education and to become more literate in their data use. And the idea is always about not just data being the answer. There is a business problem underpinning everything that we do. There is something that we're trying to fix. And the training also includes those questions around how to do problem management better, how does leadership provide space for the teams to get out of the day job to think differently. And so the training includes that, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. So we've created a program which is, I think it's pretty holistic. We have platforms and tooling you should expect. We have data lake. We have the replacement of gazers that you may have heard of in the press that we're working on at the moment. We have monitoring tools, alerting tools, automatic case creation tools, all off the back of data sets and the things that we've got in our lake. We're also doing data management analytics tooling, as you'd expect. But we've been very clear to the teams, this is not a dogmatic position. This is not about implementing data management best practice so you can tick a box. Again, you need to understand why you're doing it. Is it about the accessibility of the data? Is it about trust in your judgments? Why are we doing better data management? Why do we care about data quality? We do, believe me. So there's a bunch of stuff there around, we've got the core technology platform sitting in the cloud, very flexible, that we're working on, that we're almost all delivered. We've got data management tooling on top of that. We've got data science workbench. Most of our stuff is in R and Python at the moment, as you'd expect. But we're trying to drop those technologies out into the world, into the broader organisation. We have Tableau, but the key thing is we're trying to industrialise those services. So what we don't have is a single data science team coming up with a good idea, rolling out to their area, and not making it around the rest of the organisation. And so again, that hub-spoke community that we've created is there to encourage that, to make sure the learning is across the organisation, not just within one of the front-facing teams. Data management, I've talked about. We are committed to more sharing internally, so we've removed the ability to care about sharing from our data owners. It's not their decision. If it's FCA data, it's FCA data. It's not that team's data or this team's data. Clearly, there's a boundary when it comes to more classified material, and we obviously do hold to that. But that data management piece is really about in service to fixing the problems we have. It is not in service of data management per se. And then to support that, clearly we have to look at people, process, skills, structure. We are hiring something in the order of 80 staff in this space, and we've hired about 50 to 60 of them so far, across all data disciplines. So data science, data analysts, data visualization, data anonymization, business change people, support on the journey, across the whole kind of life cycle of data. This is not just about hiring data scientists and hiding them away and then popping up with good ideas. This is a holistic view of how we approach data as a life cycle through the organisation. And that includes, we've got HR, we've got new technical staff that we've driven into the organisation, all focused on the analytics, the data platforms, and all that kind of the enabling capabilities. But fundamentally, none of that matters. So I can build those bottom three areas, change the people, change the process, change structure, add the platform, be amazing at my decal model, whatever it might be. But fundamentally, if I'm not exploiting the data more effectively at the front end, it doesn't matter. That's kind of a bit of a almost academic activity at that point. So we've been very clear to the organisation that the transformation, the exploitation at the front end is really what matters. And I'm not here to build data management teams who do not understand what the business outcome is, do not understand how we're going to help supervisors and enforcement officers and authorisation processes and all that kind of good stuff. So we have my steering committee, more than half business. I have, because we've got the data science units dropped into the business, we are as close to the business problem as we can be. And most of our conversations now start as a problem question, not as a how can I develop this new AI technique or something like that. Okay. And so the plumbing I've kind of talked about, data science workbench, data lake, is kind of on its third release at the moment. We care about data catalogs, data dictionary. We have about 900 data sets in our data catalog. All the way from kind of dentists who give loans to teeth, through to HSBC, Santander, the big banks. And so the ability for us to have a one-size-fits-all process around that life cycle is very difficult because the data is so varied. And so we have to have a quite complex data catalogue that categorises, talks about what we've got, and we are just refreshing our metadata in that space as well, so it's easy to find the relevant data. We have over 150 data sets just in retail banking, for instance. And so you can imagine, the opportunity we've got, if people can understand it better, actually are quite sizable. And some of the early work we've done has actually been much more about educating areas of the organisation what's possible, what we've got, as opposed to bringing in new stuff or lots of new techniques. So some of the stuff we're kind of working on, and Q&A, I think I may be able to give a bit of detail on some of these. So we obviously have natural language processing around analysing documents. We get minutes, kind of shared brochures, thousands and hundreds of thousands of documents a year that we receive as an organisation. And the idea is how do we get through that quickly in an organisation that is not 100,000 strong? So NLP clearly will give lots of advantages around our ability to focus on the bits of those documents that matter. Prediction around harm, looking at past work, and to be fair, a lot of this is not predicting that you might become something like the Minority Report. It's actually about spotting harm as early as possible by knowing where to focus your eyes. And so this prediction is about stopping the harm from growing as much as anything else. I think it's fair to say that clearly, that full prediction is very difficult legally when it comes to us doing that. One of the biggest movements we've had actually is the spotting of outliers. So by having lots of data from lots of different data sets, using different data in different situations, the ability for us to spot firms where their patterns look different from everybody else, either the whole market has a problem, or actually what's more likely is those outlier firms have questions to answer. It doesn't mean they're doing something dodgy, but it means that our specificity around how we ask questions of firms is increasing at a huge pace. Our ability to say, why is this, what is this, is kind of increasing very, very quickly at the moment as an organisation. And sometimes that is not fancy stuff. That is better dashboarding, better combinations of data, and just spotting kind of the people who look a bit different. We are looking at analysing criminal networks around graph analytics. We're doing a lot of work in financial crime. Megan Butler, one of our exec directors, talked about it in the panel a few weeks ago, where we are focusing quite a lot of energy on how we can change the way we do financial crime in the UK. And there'll be some more communications about that over the next few months. Simulation work. We are looking at building synthetic data models that reflect the entirety of the UK financial system, so that we can drop policy simulation modelling through those data sets. The ideal kind of longer term is red and blue actors. How can we have kind of policy interventions, criminal interventions, and work out where policy may change the use of those? Does policy cause problems in certain areas of society? Does it stop certain things? From a financial crime perspective, does it mean it's easier to bypass certain controls if we change stuff? So there's a whole bunch of work where we think that our simulation capability will be really interesting over time, although that is pretty early days at the moment. And clearly we're looking at kind of Google results, web scraping, financial promotions, things that we we have the tooling now to be able to look at those in a much more automated fashion, to see what's going out in the market. But we care about the people too. We have spent a lot of time thinking about the careers, the retention that I talked about earlier. We have some new people. We have people being trained up. We have a data science graduate program for STEM graduates that we started only last year. We had over 2,000 applicants for 10 roles, all from clearly very good institutions. And what's interesting is some of our best work in the last 6 months has been from those graduates. Their ability to think unconstrained and go, if it was me, this is what I'd do, has absolutely transformed some areas of the way we're kind of looking at the approach to these problems. And we've also done things to kind of stop the data role being just a techie role or being just a back office role. So we had a data week. We had 900 people attend sessions in September last year, and they all went on pretty straightforward kind of business problem stuff. We had Amazon's delivery innovation lead. We have invites from people around the world. We have Data Hero Awards, and obviously we have the learning development program that I talked about. But culture matters too, because I can do everything. I can unconstrain people, I can give people technology, I can have a bunch of business problems. But if I'm in a world where kind of the leadership or the people on the ground do not act slightly differently, they don't think more broadly, they don't go after stuff, the implementation of a new culture for the organisation is important. So some of our L&Ds in the cultural space, as I say, I have business change people on my team, I have comms leads, I have a behavioural scientist, all because we want to look at how we approach things differently. This is not about putting more data in people's hands and leaving and walking away from them. It has to be about how do you transform the way you work based upon those new insights that you've received, supported clearly by the flexibility that our new digital architecture in the cloud gives us. So evangelise, be proud, care about what the data gives to you as an organisation. Think about how you can look at opportunities. As a management team, challenge yourselves, look at how you can do things differently. But also encourage. So even if you're somebody who doesn't find it particularly exciting, the ability and to change stuff, to go after new challenges, to make real improvements in the way you work, try and get people to think different in that space. Challenge. What were the things you didn't like when you first joined an organisation 5, 6, 7 years ago that you allowed yourself to kind of get used to and forget? Think back to that person who joined and went, what if we could do this differently? Why do we do it this way? And then obviously, the collaboration between teams, using data that you never thought you should use because it's not your data, has made a real difference in some areas about thinking about different data sets that they don't have today. And from a business value perspective, it is all about the outcome. So we start here. So all my workshops with the departments and the divisions start at what outcomes are you trying to achieve as an organisation? What are the problems you're finding? What is stopping you achieving that at the moment? And then it's kind of what data do you need? to spot it, to prove it, to disprove it, to scale it, to identify further issues. What are the data points that we need to do that? Only then do we start to bring in tooling, because actually the tooling is really there just to kind of serve the issue that we're trying to resolve. And we want people to think not about, again, the constraints that they find with, I can't get access to this data, the tools doesn't let me do it. Actually, just tell me what data you think will allow you to spot something, and we will build something to help you understand it. And then obviously the operations. So we are, we have business analysts, we have business architects, we have people going into the business and going, if this is your problem, what we've given you as a solution means that your process needs to change or should change. And so we've got areas of the business really thinking about, if you can give me this data, if you allow me to work this way, I would like to change the way I do my job. And actually, we had some fear that that would be a bit of a pushing of a closed door, and that's not been the case. Most of the organisation, when we spend a bit of time with them, can see the benefit, can see actually, what's possible, get excited by it. And then kind of just a couple of final things, kind of to land. What we've learned, and actually what I've learned from going to conferences and speaking to people and listening to people, and listening to some of their bad stories as well, is that this has to be multidisciplinary teams. This cannot be 30, 40 data scientists in a room, build it, they will come. It just doesn't work. People who can speak to the business, who can understand them. We are, some of our data scientists are very empathic, and we are hiring some people on that basis. They need to be able to reflect a business conversation. But we have obviously data science, data analysis. We are fully embedded into our business areas. You need to understand the regulatory system. We need to understand our enforcement processes. We are going to build something that's not right if we do not understand your business process. Economics people, socio-economic skills, looking at the policy modelling that we're looking at. Clearly we need data management, data administration as well. But we've also got librarians, researchers, people who buy our data. We've got problem management skills around actually how do you get the problem out of the business so you can understand it properly rather than leap into a solution too fast. We've got project managers, business analysts, business change, and the IT department as well. And lots more actually. So the team we've built really is a transformation team. It is not a data team. And then externally, I kind of can't forget about it. Some of you will know this stuff. So we spend a lot of time externally now as well from an innovation perspective. We look at idea generation. So we're looking at calls for input, tech talks. We engage with industry much more than we did 2 or 3 years ago. We do our tech sprints, and we released a report only a week or so ago on some of the lessons of those tech sprints. Because other regulators have asked us to kind of talk about what we've seen, some firms have been interested. We do pilots. Digital regulatory reporting, which is our kind of machine executable collection service that we're looking at trialling. It's being done with 6 banks, 6 kind of retail banks, to look at what's possible. We also have our Reg Sandbox, our advice service, where we're trying to help firms innovate the market to do different things. What's interesting here as well is we are not, from a supply perspective, we're not here to pick a big SI. Our job is not in that space. We are picking procurement kind of partners, suppliers, based upon the use cases they can work on. So we actually have quite an ecosystem of players around us at the moment, and that's likely to grow over the next year or so as we go out to different use cases. And then we obviously share, UK global engagement. There's lots of kind of engagement we do globally around kind of conferences, talking to other regulators around just what we found, what we've seen, and what we're doing differently. And my director, the Director of Innovation, Nick Cook, kind of talked a couple of months ago around the Digital Sandbox, where it's apparent that there is a gap in what's possible at the moment for small firms to be able to prove value to larger institutions or to the market as a whole. Because our tech sprints, we stand up synthetic data, we kind of move forward with it, but then we kind of close it down after a few weeks. And so the idea to prove your business process end to end with real kind of financial services data seems to be something that the industry is looking for. So the idea is that we're kind of having some early thoughts about what a digital sandbox will be, which will be representative of the financial service that you can allow people to drive further testing and further proving in that space. That's kind of it for me. Obviously QA can dig into detail in some areas if you need to. I'll probably overrun slightly. Sorry. And I'll hand over to Matthew, who's going to talk about some of his experiences.
Next one. Right, well, I'll pick up from there. And What I'm going to do, as I look at this, and I'll introduce myself with the two doesn't it? I'm going to pick up on the people skills and culture aspect. I think that's something that, certainly from my point of view, working with these two organisations is really key to making any of these changes work. So, a bit about myself. I've worked in financial services for about half my career, and now I work mostly in the public sector, but GenServe is a non-executive role that I have. The two organisations come from different aspects of regulation. SSRO was created by the Ministry of Defence, and I'll give a little bit more detail about what it does. It's a small regulatory authority, and it's driven by data and people. And what we're looking at is the large procurements that the MOD is involved in. And we collect data. We also use a lot of financial market data. There will be tomorrow an announcement by Secretary of State about the profit rates that industry earns. That's work that we do. So I'll talk about data and people there. And then secondly, GenServe, it's a niche consultancy business. I'm a non-executive there. I'm not heavily involved in the business, but I'll talk you through the digital transformation that company is making. It's gas and electricity markets, that's where the Gen comes from. So it's then providing services to the industry. So just a little bit about GenServe. And really, it's a kind of strategy review territory that I get involved in as a board member. ABC stood for Accelerate Growth, which, as you can see from these a chart there, it's grown rapidly. That's a combination of acquisition, it's a combination of organic growth. It's a 200-person, 25 million turnover, profitable consultancy business. The B is for building relationships, the C is for cultivating talent. There was no digital until about a year ago, and that's the key thing. So how do you, 5 tips here, how does the digital strategy start to transform a people-based consultancy business into a more effective go-to-market approach? And I think just highlighted some obvious themes here, which I think you probably all recognise wherever you're working. So getting board-level support is absolutely important. Any of you who are in that environment, obviously when you're looking for these roles and you're looking to complement the board, you need digital skills now. And I certainly find, having trained as an accountant and gone through banking, I'm not a digital expert, but rapidly it's becoming clear that if you don't have that expertise at the board, you're not going to succeed as a business. The second point is employee engagement. And it's really great to hear these stories, because I think you're absolutely right that employees in any business, regulator or private sector, they actually are, I think, completely savvy and open to the change. I think we all fear resistance to change as a kind of theme. I actually think it's changed. I think people are really engaged in this. So the workshops that I've been involved in as a non-exec is, people are honest about the capability of the business. They're keen they use the best technology to help the business grow. And that really drives improvement. So that's certainly something I'd recommend. And then the opportunity and risk appetite. I mean, if you're going to shift the way a business makes money and the way its culture works, that is something that the board's going to have to embrace. And I think certainly we've had to shift a people-based consultancy business to be much more entrepreneurial. Look at the way that it's going to make money. Driving into the approaches that the business is taking has taken a bit more of a risky approach to it. And then, there will be changes to the workforce as a result of that, because there is only a finite amount of capital to invest in it. So the two sort of strands that then come to investment. So strategic investments for GenServe has been about looking at the business that it's undertaking, looking for acquisitions and partnerships in a commercial partnership sense. One of I'm not going to get into a huge amount of detail about the business, but one of the things that it does do is it undertakes a series of regulatory functions for the energy market. So to give one example, if you need to have a biomass boiler and you need an approved supplier, and a sustainable source for that biomass, GenServe provides all of the data that you need to have that full supply chain credibility. And that's gone from the various generations of databases, and it's now renewing again to be a digital investment. And the other side of things that GenServe is doing is helping customers switch their supplier. So again, the industry codes of governance that affect how different market participants operate have moved from a long FCA style handbook to a new digital platform, and that's something that Gen launched last year. It's gaining a lot of traction, and so it's a commercial partnership. It wasn't possible for the business to develop that in-house or internally. So, I think, any of you involved in businesses moving forward through that role, if you're looking at it from a high level, get you to the end of the strategy. Some tips there as to what I think works. And now I'll look at the SSRO, just to recap this. So the SSRO was created about 5 years ago. It's an MOD-sponsored regulator, a quango if you like. And what we've got here is a set of duties here is taxpayer value for money and industry fair returns. That's a balancing act. Hopefully it's not a zero-sum game. It will get productivity and efficiency, I think, it would benefits. If you're a keen follower of public accounts committee hearings, there was a session yesterday on the nuclear estate. How much does the MOD spend to equip, develop, and build its nuclear fleet? All of that stuff goes through the data services that we run. So we're collecting data on about £37 billion worth of contracts. That will grow and grow and grow because the MOD purchases a lot of equipment and services without a competitive process. That's why we're single source. So our duties there are to improve the outcomes there. Hopefully, as taxpayers, we value safe society. We want industry to be able to prosper, deliver this. It employs a lot of people. So that's where we've been into it. And I think these, again, 5 tips there on sort of people skills and culture piece. This was a new piece of regulation. So for us, the key thing up front was the stakeholder engagement. A reluctant set of industry participants coming into a new regulatory environment are not keen to be providing data to a regulator. Why do we want it? What are we going to do with it? How is it going to harm their business? All of that stuff. So that stakeholder engagement has been critical. And I think we're proud of some small successes. So we publish a statistical bulletin. It just tells you how much money is being spent, how long these contracts are going to last, what profits people are earning. That's public confidence. And then you can contrast it with PFI. PFI world has I think part of the problem with PFI has been nobody knows how much anybody's earning and they think they're all gangsters, right? That's the problem. I don't think we're in that territory in this space. I think we're in a much more benign environment. So that's a sort of statement again. The user communities is really critical. I think we're not anywhere near as sophisticated as the FCA. I think compared to some other regulators, we're all now looking at this. What user groups do we build around this system? And from the SSRO point of view, we've got 2 major groups of users. We've got the purchasing side of the MOD. To give you some numbers there, the MOD has an agency called the Defence Equipment Supplies Agency. It employs 12,000 people. They spend all their time procuring equipment and supporting the provisions and making sure that the ammunition is in the right person's hands, the machines are in the right place, all of that logistical arrangement. That's one group. And of course the other side of it is accountants and finance people within the defence industry who now have to submit returns to us in the same way that anybody in the bank would submit regulatory returns. That's not in the community. So we've had to develop an understanding of that and engage with them and make sure they understand what we need. And the transparency piece, the public and the private reporting. The private reporting is really to help the MOD understand what its portfolio looks like. You would think it probably should know what it's buying and what it's spending money on, but actually what you find is that the public sector it's far more of a sort of fragmented set of silos and teams who don't necessarily talk to each other. So one of the benefits of bringing this into data sort of area is we can bring all that data together, we can put the portfolio together, we can dismantle it, we can show people the kind of characteristics, we can help teams indicate performance. So that's been a really important development. And then the recruitment and training. I wish, and I'd love to find out more about your budget, but we're tiny, right? We've got a very finite budget. So for us, recruiting and training people is much, much more difficult. But I think we're doing a pretty good job. We've got a highly effective team. Obviously, to get this to work, build systems, we need that effort. And then the insourcing and outsourcing approach, I mean, I think from my experience doing this for the last 4 years, we've become better as a customer because we understand more about what we're doing. So I've insourced, for example, profit rate work, but I'm outsourcing the platform development from a proprietary system. That balance will change, and part of my role is to make sure that we're buying the right things and we're developing things that we don't need to go to the market. So that's all I was going to say. It's really just to give you some wider context, hopefully not too much extra time on the end of the much more important talk.